everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of the Dive for the Pylon podcast. I'm your host, Cole Weintraub, alongside my partner, Zach Van Arsdale. And wow, what a week of sports. So much has happened. Zach and I have been dying to make this episode, and here we are. Zach, as always, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm hanging in there. How about you?
I'm doing good. Crazy week. Lots of schoolwork, but hey, we made it out almost.
Almost there.
We got tomorrow. Yep. And so the James Harden trade is yesterday. I couldn't wait for today's podcast. I needed to make the video yesterday, and I didn't have Zach with me, but I basically went through it. I'm a Nets fan, so that's why I'm so passionate about the topic. It's really it's just crazy because I don't know what's gonna happen. It like I said yesterday, it can make or break the Brooklyn Nets. We'll go through who was in the deal. The Nets received James Harden. They sent Karis LeVert and to the Indiana Pacers and Jared Allen to the Cleveland Cavaliers, along with Taurean Prince. And the Rockets received Victor Oladipo, Dante Exum, Rodions Krug's, and 4 unprotected first-round picks of the Brooklyn Nets and 4 pick swaps. That's 8 years of draft picks from the Brooklyn Nets. Not really sure what their future is going to be looking like without KD, Kyrie, and James Harden. I mean, these guys aren't going to play forever. And giving away all those picks is always risky. I remember back in, I think it was 2013 when the Nets traded for Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce from the Boston Celtics, and we threw so many draft picks in the deal. Jaylen Brown ended up getting out of that deal. That's right. And just the Nets are notoriously known for just overpaying in trades. So the question that I'm asking is Houston the winners of this deal? And if the Nets don't win the finals in the next 3 or so years, hand the trade trophy to the Houston Rockets. I mean, they just got Victor Oladipo and 8 draft picks. Like, Victor Oladipo is a solid basketball player. He can put up 22 points. They have John Wall. Christian Wood has been shooting the basketball amazing. They picked him up from Detroit in the offseason. And it's just all looking good for Houston. They've got a few other good players like Daniel House. I like him. So I really think that if Houston can make some good draft picks with the Nets picks, they could be looking nice for the next couple of years. You got Karis LeVert headed to Indiana, and this was the one that hit me the most because Karis LeVert is one of my favorite players on the Nets. He's not Kevin Durant or Kyrie, but he would come off the bench and drop 20. I think it was the last 4 games he dropped 20 straight points. 4 straight games he dropped 20 points. And going to Indiana, he's going to be playing alongside Malcolm Brogdon, Domantas Sabonis, and Miles Turner. That is a great young core. LeVert's going to be stepping into a new role, so he might have to, ease into it a bit. He's going to be starting at the 2. He did start in the bubble for the Nets. But I really think that team in the future can also, turn on the Jets. LeVert can do it all, and he has the potential to be a top scorer in the NBA. And then we shifted to Jared Allen. Jared Allen is a great shot blocker. He can throw down the basketball. And what confuses me here is, I wouldn't say confused, but Cleveland has a stacked front court. They got Kevin Love returning from an injury, Andre Drummond, and JaVale McGee. And they released Thon Maker. He's, irrelevant. But Jared Allen is a great young player, and Andre Drummond is on the last year of his contract. He's making $28 million this year, so I understand it from that perspective. But it leads me to think that Andre Drummond might get moved this season. I mean, the Cavs started 5-7. Darius Garland, Colin Sexton, and Kevin Love have been banged up. I really think that they can try to get some value out of him and really, set up for the future because, I mean, Sexton and Garland are 2 great young players, and they've also got Larry Nance, who's also a good player. So I don't know how to feel about the Nets. I talked about it yesterday. It's on Instagram, and I have high hopes for them this year. I have to. So, Zach, you have anything to fill in?
Yeah, I think it's hard to find a loser in this trade I think you won't know until 2 or 3 years down the road, because with any of these teams, it's for the future. And obviously for the Nets, it's winning the finals. For Houston, it's probably getting to the playoffs and competing. I don't think they have a final. Like I don't think they have a championship roster at the moment.
Right.
But I think that with those 4 draft picks, and you look at who they have, Victor Oladipo is not going anywhere for a long time. He's going to be in the league for 6 or 7 more years at minimum. So with these 4 first-round draft picks, Houston can really get something going down there. And on the flip side, the Nets took away their future. If this doesn't work out, which to be honest, I would not be surprised because you're having 3 players who want the ball on the same court. I mean, KD and Kyrie worked. We saw that. That combination, that duo worked. But now adding James Harden, who is used to averaging 30 points a game, he wants the ball in his hands. Kyrie is going to want the ball in his hands. And I think that could create an issue down the road for the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, I mean, Kyrie has to be there first to want the ball.
Well, that's very true.
He's got to be
he's
there.
a mess right now.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I mean, when Harden's on, it's like he's playing 1-on-5 basketball. It's nobody's stopping the guy. He wants the ball in his hands, and maybe that mindset will change when he's on Brooklyn. I mean, I don't think he's ever had he played with Durant and Westbrook back in OKC, but Harden was a six-man back then. And Westbrook and Durant, I mean, Durant was really good and Westbrook was, on the come up. But this is a lot different for James Harden. James Harden is not the guy anymore. He's one of the guys.
So. I definitely think it'll take getting used to for James Harden. But I think that it's a situation that he's wanted to be a part of for quite a while now. Obviously, he's made that clear through post-game interviews and practice interviews, but I just don't know if he's ready to take on the task. Because again, I think it's going to be interesting to see when this team fully comes together how they do. I mean, obviously they're going to win games, but there's no guarantee they even make it out of the East, to be honest. I mean, they still have to perform. Just because they have the big 3 doesn't mean they're gonna make it out, Yeah. So it'll be a fun, conference finals on both sides in the Western Conference and the Eastern Conference. But I actually want to make a quick point on Jared Allen. I'm actually happy that he was traded to Cleveland because I remember, he was very frustrated when DeAndre Jordan signed with the Brooklyn Nets because he was supposed to be their center. He was supposed to be their up and coming, prospect, and they went out and signed Kyrie and KD's, lifelong friend. That was kind of a slap in the face for him. So I am happy that he's out of Brooklyn and he kind of gets a new start out there in Cleveland. So I'm excited to see what he can do.
That's a good point. I like that. Yeah, I totally agree. Jared Allen has had a pretty big impact on the Nets in a short time. So if he gets his role in next year, probably it's gonna be fun because he can do a lot on the court. And he's definitely one of the best young centers in the league. So let's shift our attention to the NCAA National Championship, the College Football Playoff Championship. I mean, we predicted it, and I said in the last, a lot of the country thought so. Maybe not the bettors, but Alabama just went out there and dominated. I put up a video on Snapchat. It was in the first quarter, and I saw Devontae Smith probably catch 6 passes within the first 2 drives. And I was like, this guy might go for 300 tonight. I thought it was very possible that he could go for 300 yards. And sadly, he got injured after the first half. But his first half, oh my goodness, 12 catches, 215 yards, and 3 touchdowns. That is some Madden numbers right there. He dominate. They had no chance against him. They put Sean Wade. Sean Wade was talking about how he wanted to go up against Devontae Smith. Well, that was a mistake. Devontae Smith was 1 step faster than everyone on Ohio State, and it was just really interesting to watch. And when he was out, I thought Ohio State may have had some life, but Alabama put it away pretty fast. And Nick Saban was hoisting his, I believe, 6th championship with Alabama. Seventh.
Yeah. I mean, Devontae Smith, it almost looked like Ohio State was so confident in their ability for some odd reason that they thought they could leave Devontae Smith in one-on-one coverage, multiple times throughout the game. He was lined up on a middle linebacker. Devontae Smith was the best football player in college football this year, the best. And that wasn't, it wasn't only close, but yet you're going to line him up with a middle linebacker who, first of all, doesn't have the speed with Devontae Smith, doesn't have the ability of Devontae Smith. I mean, Ohio State just I mean, if he would have played in the third and fourth quarter, it would have been a much, different end of the game. I think it would have been a much greater score difference because, I know at halftime, Coach Saban said that there is no, scoreboard. It's you keep scoring. It's a national championship. And, you know, it, Ohio State and their offense didn't even do terrible. Like, that Alabama defense is pretty good. But the defensive side that first two drives, you knew the game was you knew that it was going to be a shootout and Ohio State's offense had to compete. And, you can't really expect Ohio State's offense to put up 50 points on Bama's defense.
Right.
Ohio State's defense just let them down. So,
Yeah, I mean, it was when Trey Sermon went down in the, I think, first drive, I wasn't too concerned with Ohio State. I felt like they were, Trey Sermon's, we talked about in the last episode, Trey Sermon's been going crazy on the ground, but they did have Master Teague behind him. Master Teague ended up running 2 touchdowns, maybe 3. And, he's also a good running back. So I don't really think it was the Sermon injury that really put them, sunk their ship. But my God, I mean, it wasn't just Devontae Smith. I mean, Mac Jones committed close to 70% of his passes, 5 touchdowns, over 450 passing yards, looking like Joe Burrow from last year against my Clemson Tigers. And Mac Jones, speaking of Mac Jones, he raised his draft stock. I at the start of the year, I don't even think he was projected to be a 3rd or 4th round pick.
no, I
Now,
think he was a late draft pick. He was going to
yeah,
be probably a team's going to pick him up and give him a shot, be a
right.
third string quarterback. And Monday night, he said, I'm a first round pick, come
Yeah,
get me. He said, I'm going to compete.
yeah,
And I think it's going to be interesting to see who drafts him. It'll be interesting to see where he goes. I've seen mock drafts with him, up in the high teens to 29, 30 to the second, third round.
yeah,
So it'll be very interesting to see where he goes. But wherever he goes, I think it's going to be a great pickup for that team. I
yeah,
think that he kind of reminds me of Tom Brady. He has the accuracy. From the looks of it, has the arm strength.
right.
The mobility, he can definitely run out of the pocket, but that's not his strength. He wants to stay in the pocket as much as he can. And again, we saw what he did in Alabama. You surround him with good wide receivers, he's going to be a great quarterback.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, if I'm an NFL scout, I'd probably have more confidence in Mac Jones over Trey Lance. I mean, Trey Lance goes to North Dakota State, and Mac Jones just lit it up on the biggest stage possible. Mac Jones is the higher NFL prospect than Trey Lance. I believe he will be taken higher than Trey Lance. And I mean, it's definitely going to be a fun project. I could call him a project because you're not really sure what you're going to get. I mean, Mac Jones before last year, he wasn't really thought out to be anything. He played for Tua when he got hurt, and he played all right, but Alabama didn't even crack the top 4 teams, which was astounding. Maybe not even the top 10 teams at some point. But another guy that played really well and has played well the entire season, over 23 touchdowns this year, Najee Harris. Wow. I'm saying this a lot. We said it in the last podcast. Before the season, I said that ETN probably was the best running back in college football, especially since he came back to play. But Najee Harris, he may have flipped the script. He was really good the other night. He was fast. He was running through guys, and he was catching the ball out of the backfield consistently. So he's shown that he can do everything. And he's wearing the number 22. It almost reminded me of Derrick Henry with, a little less muscle. But Alabama dominated and everything. And yeah, I'm not surprised they won the football game.
No, definitely not. I think that was that was almost predetermined. I think Ohio State needed a miracle. You know,
Yeah.
I am happy for Ohio State that they did get their revenge.
Mhm.
Not that I necessarily wanted them to win, but just to see that, program, the struggles they went through this year with COVID, it was not their choice to play 5 games for the Big Ten championship. Kids want to go out and play football. So when everyone was hating on them for getting lucky and getting in, they proved all those people wrong by saying they can compete with the best of the best teams. So I was glad to see that. Our next big point though, how about Bill O'Brien, man?
You know,
Going to Alabama as the new offensive coordinator. I mean, that is a shocker for me. I thought Nick Saban, it seems to me where, I mean, in the most recent years, you got Lane Kiffin, who was recruited, as an offensive coordinator from Alabama to go coach at
Ole Miss,
FAU or
Ole Miss, I think.
Ole Miss, my bad. But, I think that there was another offense coordinator before Steven Sarkisian that was recruited to go get a head coach. So it was interesting to me to choose Bill O'Brien, who was a former head coach, because I feel like Saban tended to stay more to the, a quarterback coach, bringing him up or going out and finding a previous offensive coordinator. But I'll be interested to see how Bill O'Brien does down there.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Sarkeesian's heading to Texas. I mean, Texas is always sort of in it, might be referred to as one of the most overrated college football teams. Bill O'Brien has had a lot of history in college sports. He was with Brown at one point, and he was the head coach of Penn State in 2012 to the 2013 season. But what really, when I saw this move, I thought of Bill Belichick, because Bill O'Brien spent time with New England from 2007 to 2011 as position coach. And then he got his head coaching job, or he got his head coaching job in Penn State and won 4 AFC South title division champions. There were 4 AFC titles, and they brought them back to he brought them to the playoffs 4 times. So he wasn't a bad coach, but that DeAndre Hopkins trade, I mean, D Hop, that was a horrible trade. They traded DeAndre Hopkins at the beginning of the season with a rising quarterback in Deshaun Watson, and they got a $14 million running back in David Johnson, who's coming off a bad injury in 2018. It just didn't make any sense. And then he got fired after the Texans were not playing well. And here he
Shooting
is.
5-star, yeah.
Here he is, Alabama offensive coordinator. So, I mean, those AFC South division champions they did stand out to me when I did some research on him, but I do think this is a bit of a questionable decision because I'm not really sure how it's going to go. I think when he learns the scheme, the Nick Saban scheme, I don't know how much can go wrong. I don't think Nick Saban's going to allow him to really take over. He's the offensive coordinator. It's still Nick Saban. You got Bryce Young coming into play next year. He's really exciting. He's the top quarterback recruit of the 2021 class. He's going to be exciting to watch. But Alabama has a lot of key components leaving the offense. They have Mac Jones, Najee Harris, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle.
Waddle, yep.
Yeah. So one guy that's going to be there next year is John Mechie. He was a sophomore this year. You saw him in the national championship game. I think he had 8 catches for 80 yards. He's got a good story. He's from Thailand, I believe. And I don't think that, having Bill O'Brien there is really going to sink the ship, as I said recently, but it's definitely going to be interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got to think of the kids who Nick Saban's bringing in, the 4 and 5-star recruits. I saw a TikTok earlier today that says every recruit that Nick Saban has brought to Alabama has won a national championship. And that stuck with me because you look back at it, he's won, every 3 years, he's won at least one national championship. And that's what makes, kids got to stay in college for 3 years. So that's actually really cool to think about. But yeah, I think Bill O'Brien definitely gets help with the recruiting process there. Any big, big offensive or defense recruit, Alabama's probably up there on their list. Um, so, Bill O'Brien definitely has a couple, options once he gets down there between John Mechie and Bryce Young. But
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see how he does next year.
Yeah, and he can't trade any of his star players anymore. So, I mean,
That is very true.
so if we're gonna look at the NFL, we're gonna talk about the playoffs in the next episode. But let's look at the grand scheme of things. Let's look at behind the scenes. Doug Peterson. I mean, Zach. The first thing I have to ask you is, how do you feel about your Philadelphia Eagles firing Doug Peterson?
I think my honest first reaction was a little bit surprised because I knew that, 2 or 3 weeks before the day he got fired, it was a lot of, praising Peterson for getting through the struggles and that he would be back next year and they're gonna give him a fresh start. And he obviously had some meetings with the owner, Jeff Lurie, throughout the week after they were eliminated after the Washington football team game.
Right.
And from what I read, it was just Peterson was on a completely different level. He wanted to pretty much keep what they had there and just keep, running it back each year. And Jeff Lurie he understands that this team probably their best shot at winning a, Super Bowl in the next, 5 to 10 years, it's going to be a rebuild. And with them not connecting on the same page, it was the best thing to go to let it was the best thing for them to let Doug Peterson go. So, I mean, I think that there's definitely better options out there. I think with Peterson, his first couple years, coaches didn't know how to coach against him because he was so new to the league. He was a fresh start, um, at least as a head coach. But once teams started figuring out how his, offense worked, because he became the play caller this year, and I mean the offensive play calling was horrendous. With Wentz especially, and Hurts it got a little bit better, but still nothing special. Teams figured out how to stop him, and it was all over from there. So I do think it's good for the Eagles to get that fresh start, especially with Jalen Hurts as a quarterback. You know, I would pray to God that they can somehow convince Lincoln Riley to leave Oklahoma, and he's probably our top target, along with I would say Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles was definitely up there. But if we can somehow convince Lincoln Riley to leave and come coach Jalen Hurts in the NFL, I mean that'd be a miracle right there. But I find
Yeah.
it hard to believe that he's going to leave
Yeah.
Spencer Rattler.
Yeah, I mean, those college coaches, they do get paid a lot of money, so you really have to send them an enticing offer to come to the NFL. I mean, you hear about, I mean, we'll get to later, Urban Meyer recently signed by the Jaguars today, but before that Washington football team game, I thought that Peterson was returning. I was reading articles. They said it before the game that the general conception was that he was coming back. But then after his decision to play Sudfeld, that just fell through. And we were sitting on Instagram Live watching the game together, and we were besides ourselves. I know you're an Eagles fan. You probably wanted the better draft pick, but Jalen Hurts, he was on the sideline shaking his head. You had Miles Sanders go on a radio show and talk about it. Jalen Hurts is standing on the sideline, upset. Why would you upset your likely future quarterback like that? And wouldn't you want to see if he can come back on a Sunday night football game when everybody is watching? Like that, it just made no sense to me. And like it made no sense to anybody. And that's what got Doug Peterson fired because no one could back him up. Who could back him up? You can't defend tanking unless you're, an ignorant, biased fan. No one in the industry is going to, promote tanking, I wouldn't think. But and then it brings the question, does this mean Carson Wentz wants to go? I do think it's going to be, a head coaching thing. If the head coach sees that Wentz is the starter next year, which I doubt, I do not think that Carson Wentz will be the Eagles starting quarterback next year, but there is a chance. And, you got to think about potential landing spots. I mean, his relationship with Doug Peterson fell completely through. We saw that. there were pictures on Instagram showing, Doug Peterson giving Carson Wentz snarky looks, and maybe that wasn't all true, but you know, I when I think Carson Wentz, I think Indianapolis, I think Chicago, or I think New England. And New England's what really stands out to me. Me and Zach were talking before the show, and we brought up the his contract situation. And Carson Wentz is making an absurd amount of money. But
Terrible deal.
yeah,
Terrible deal. That
terrible.
was I mean, when they gave Carson the deal, he was playing at a level that they expected to continue. They thought that he was going to be a top 5 quarterback and that he was going to, be this new wave of quarterbacks in the league who were mobile, who were, passing threats. But I mean, he just never, after that torn ACL, you could say he never got back in his stride. And whether that was because the Eagles rushed him, back because they were wanting to win at that time, or because, Carson just lost his swagger, I don't know. But that $4 million or the $128 million deal, I mean, so much of that guaranteed. And for a person who was coming, I'm fairly certain the deal was completed after his torn ACL.
Mm.
So, you see the injuries and you still are willing to give him that much guaranteed money. I mean, I think it's a bad deal, and it's going to come back to hurt the Eagles, especially now, because any trades they make, the cap hit is going to go on the Eagles unless a team like the Colts and probably like the Bears are willing to take on, his entire contract. I think Bill Belichick is a smart enough head coach to realize that if we wait a year or two, his cap hit goes down, and then we can take that contract on when he's got a year or two left and, go all in and re-sign him if he has a good year, instead of, buying him now and giving up a lot of assets and, still having to pay that hefty contract. So, I think he'll end up in Indianapolis, to be honest. I think that the Eagles are going to complete something this offseason. I think it'll involve probably a player or two, and then probably a pick or two. I don't think they're going to get as much as they want because Indianapolis will take some of Carson Wentz's salary off the Eagles' hands. But, it'll be bittersweet, to be honest, as an Eagles fan, to see Carson go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I'm gonna have to, step into this debate here and say that New England Patriots, they want to win. Bill Belichick doesn't want to go 7-9 and miss the playoffs again because Bill doesn't do that. Bill Belichick's the best coach ever. I don't care that he had Tom Brady. He's the best coach ever. And I think what they could do is eat half of Wentz's contract. And, I think that would probably level out the deal a little bit. And you bring in Carson Wentz. And I also think you go out and sign Zach Ertz because New England's tight end situation has been abysmal. I mean, they haven't had any tight ends since that Super Bowl against the Rams with Gronk. Once Gronk left, you had Ryan Izzo. You had, I think, Ben Watson was playing tight end for them at one point. And
Yeah,
there's nobody there.
They always relied on Gronk. Gronk was always their guy. He was, even if he was banged up, he was on the field.
Yeah.
So they never had to have that backup option, or they never had to have that good of a backup option. So,
yeah,
again, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I think if you're New England, you bring in the two buddies, you trade for Wentz, and you bring in Ertz, and you might have a team next year with some help in free agency. So speaking of potential landing spots, it came out earlier in the week that Deshaun Watson may want out of Houston. And personally, Deshaun Watson's my favorite player in the NFL. I'm a big Clemson Tiger fan. I watched him all the way through college, the national championship, throw to Renfro to win it. I was going out of my mind at 12:30 in the morning. Deshaun Watson got to the NFL and produced right from there, got injured, came back, and, he's still the same guy. He's still the same awesome player. And Houston, I mean, we heard J.J. Watt, NFL mic'd up, said, "We wasted another one of your years, Deshaun." And he's totally right. Deshaun Watson is not going to be, Deshaun Watson for the next 15 years. He's going to have, a window of his, prime years. And I don't think that will come with Houston. We talked about Bill O'Brien's dumb trade with DeAndre Hopkins, and that must have really upset Deshaun, because Deshaun's coming into the year, excuse me, and he's thinking, I got DeAndre Hopkins, I got Will Fuller, I got Brandon Cooks.
I
But
got targets.
yeah, he's got targets. I mean, maybe not Brandon Cooks yet, but definitely Will Fuller. So then when Hopkins gets traded, and then you hear later in the year that Will Fuller was caught for taking steroids, PEDs, like, could Deshaun Watson get any more unlucky? He gets Brandon Cooks 1,000 yards, over 1,000 yards. Brandon Cooks had a great year. He stayed on the field the whole year and was Deshaun's main guy. But, it was really transparent that something like this may happen when DeAndre Hopkins was traded. So Watson led the league in passing yards last year, and that probably speaks to, they were always playing from behind. But Watson made everyone better around him. I think they had a receiver named Chad Hansen, who I'd never heard of, but I think he put up a couple nice games down the stretch. So, Deshaun Watson's just one of those. He's a top 5 quarterback. You think of players that can really change the game. We saw in Buffalo, or that Buffalo wild card game last year, where he got spun around and somehow made it out. He looked like Eli Manning delivering the
Yeah.
ball over the middle to Tyree. Little more, agile. But Deshaun Watson is a playmaker, and anyone who can, get their hands on him is very lucky, because Deshaun Watson's a generational talent, and I don't use that phrase lightly. I think 3 potential landing spots. You got Pittsburgh, Miami, and the Jets. So we'll go through those 3 teams. I mean, Big Ben, it's reported that he wants to stay in Pittsburgh, but the ball is in the Steelers' hands, or Steelers' court. Excuse me. I don't think his chances are very great going to Pittsburgh. I mean, the Steelers, coming off that brutal loss, which we'll get to more tomorrow, but I don't really see it. They don't really seem like an organization that has enough to get Deshaun Watson. Miami, you got Tua Tagovailoa. What are you going to do with him? Did he play well enough to, make you think, all right, he's our guy? They played him so early last year because they wanted to get an idea of what kind of quarterback he is in the NFL. And I don't think he played that bad. And I think a lot of people are overreacting. I mean, this guy is not having injury issues. That was the one hit on him. Why is Tua Tagovailoa this big, oh my God, he stinks? Because I don't understand that. I was seeing Justin Fields to the Dolphins. Like, I don't understand all of this, banter about Tua Tagovailoa. It doesn't make any sense. And then the Jets. I mean, they clearly have the draft pick to get Deshaun Watson, the number 2 overall. It could take away from the fact that they didn't get Trevor Lawrence. But, I mean, I think the Jets could really make a run from him. You do got Sam Darnold, but if you could package Sam Darnold and a couple picks, I think you make the deal happen. I think Sam Darnold could thrive with the right people around him in Houston. So what do you think?
Yeah,
Where do you think
definitely.
Deshaun Watson ends up?
I mean, to be honest, I think he will end up at Miami. I know you just said that. I don't know why people are overreacting about Tua, but I was reading that the issue wasn't about how he was playing; it was how he was developing. And the Miami was hoping that he would, improve his skills, improve his reads, improve his football IQ as the season went on, and they weren't able to see that. That's why in late game situations they couldn't trust him. They had to bring in Ryan Fitzpatrick because they couldn't trust Tua to make the right reads, to make the right throws. And that's a big thing. If Tua's supposed to be the franchise quarterback down there, you only have Ryan Fitzpatrick for how many years? When he's probably one of the veteran, I mean, he's one of the veteran quarterbacks who can teach Tua a lot about the game, and I hope Tua works out, whether that's in Miami, but I do think that if a trade is to happen between the Texans and the Dolphins, I think that they would ship Tua to Houston. I think that they would be a Tua for Deshaun Watson kind of trade with obviously some picks involved. But, I think that trade would benefit both teams. I think Miami's more in a situation to win, and I think they have, you know, through this draft, if they don't give up their third overall pick, they third overall pick, yeah, they they have a really good strong foundation to possibly compete for a playoff. And we saw them this year; they just missed out on the playoffs. And Houston is still kind of just in the rebuilding phase. So I think that if Tua goes there, he can kind of work with a team that needs to be more developed and needs more time to get under their feet. So I think Miami's the best landing spot for Deshaun Watson.
Okay. I mean, I respect your opinion. And Miami and Houston does have some trade history. They did Miami dealt Laramie Tunsil, all pro left tackle, to Houston
For a first round pick.
for a lot of picks.
That's
So
the third round pick this year is the
right.
Texans.
And
So
and
from
they
that Tunsil deal.
yeah, and the Dolphins knew all along that, I mean, it all links back to Deshaun Watson. When DeAndre Hopkins was traded, they knew that the Texans weren't in a win mode, and they didn't even have a draft pick this year. So Miami knew what they had, and it's pretty crazy to me that people are calling out Tua after going 6-3. I mean, it's a pretty good record. He didn't play very well in that Oakland game. He was taken out. They still ended up winning the game. So there's a lot to take out of this. I mean, Deshaun Watson, like I said, I mean, anyone he goes to, he's going to make an impact immediately and make that team a contender. So I mentioned earlier, Urban Meyer is going to Jacksonville. I mean, they're finalizing a deal, and this is pretty exciting. You bring in one of the better college coaches. I mean, he's been out of the NCAA for, I think, 2 years now. Ryan Day filled in for him. He's been working, I think, on Fox Sports, and it looks like they finally were able to make a deal with him. And Trevor Lawrence is going to Jacksonville. So you got Urban Meyer and you got Trevor Lawrence. What do you think about this? I think that this is going to be a solid 1-2 combo. Urban Meyer obviously knows what he's doing, probably more than Doug Marrone, and he's going to know how to develop a quarterback. Granted, his quarterbacks over time with, in Florida with Tim Tebow, then Cardale Jones, then Braxton Miller, then JT Barrett. I mean, that's not the sexiest list of quarterbacks, but I mean, the guy definitely knows what he's doing. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a great combination. Similar to a Miami situation with Deshaun Watson, Jacksonville's got wide receivers. They got DJ Chark, Chenault Jr.,
Yep.
uh,
Keelan Cole.
Keenan Cole. You know, they've got targets that even with James Robinson, I
Yeah.
think this offense can be a very good offense with Trevor Lawrence
Yeah.
and Urban Meyer. Um, I think it's going to come down to the defense in Jacksonville, to be honest. I think that, in the NFL, you got to play defense. If you don't play defense, you're not going to win games. But this offense is going to be scary with Trevor Lawrence and Urban Meyer. I'm excited to watch it.
Me too. Yeah, James Robinson, I mean, had a great season. He's I mean, there aren't too many workhorse running backs in the NFL, and it might be because Jacksonville literally has nobody else to run the ball. But James Robinson, came onto the scene last year and did his job, and he's really exciting. Like you said, Shark, Chenault, and Cole. I think they can go in free agency and add another wide receiver just, to solidify that. I don't think it's going to be a Godwin or a Robinson, but I do think they could get someone who's going to make an impact, maybe like a Corey Davis, someone around there. Um, so yeah, but I do agree. Jacksonville's defense is horrible. I'm looking at their games. I know they weren't really trying, but you got 31 points to the Titans, 40 points to the Ravens, 41 points to the Bears, 28 to the Colts,
Yeah.
27 to the Vikings. It's crazy to me how that they were in the AFC Championship game in 2017. Like it's crazy. Like Bortles at the helm. And
Well,
looking around,
yeah, but you look at who was on the team 2017. Fournette, Bortles, I mean Ramsey.
Allen
I
Robinson.
mean, yeah, they had, that team was so good, and they just, I mean, obviously they kind of really all played really, really well that year, but again, I mean, that happens, and there's no guarantee that it was going to happen again. But there's also, nothing saying that it wasn't going to happen again. So
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and Jacksonville's defense does have a few bright spots. I think they signed Joe Scobert in the offseason, CJ Henderson they drafted. Um, and Miles Jack. Miles Jack's one of the more hard hitting linebackers in the league, and Josh Allen off the edge. Josh Allen's a special guy. So, like you said, defense is really what makes or breaks the Jaguars. And if they can't put a defense around Trevor Lawrence, I don't see how the Jaguars win them more than 5 games next year. I don't. So,
no, I agree.
well, I think this was a pretty good second episode. I mean, first episode was full of NFL playoff, and then today we've got all of this sports news. This week we've got all of this sports news. It's fun to be a sports fan right now. Thank you guys for listening. We will be releasing the NFL Divisional Playoff Special tomorrow or Saturday, and the social media links are in the description below. And yeah, you have
Thanks for
anything else?
watching, guys. We
Yep.
appreciate it.
All right. Peace.